Why was everyone laughing when she opened her case? Why did silence fall the moment the pink metal gleamed beneath the morning sun? Dawn broke across Air Force Base like a quiet dare. The air smelled of oil, brass, and anticipation. The annual Precision Championship wasn't just another competition. It was the crucible where reputations were forged and dismantled. 53 of the nation's most lethal marksmen had gathered. Veterans, war heroes, tactical instructors, quiet killers with resumes written in shadows, each one certain he had what it took to stand at the summit of impossible distance. And then there was her. Stepped out of her modest sedan, carrying a simple black case. No entourage, no handshake tour, just a woman moving with the kind of unspoken discipline that unsettles the unprepared. She didn't try to project authority. She didn't need to. Her posture carried the imprint of endless hours under a rucksack, endless drills until muscle memory had replaced hesitation with instinct. But no one here knew her name, not yet. The hierarchy established itself instantly. Combat veterans at the top, range shooters and academy types somewhere in the middle, and wide-eyed hopefuls at the bottom. Didn't belong in any of those neat little categories. The men around her looked, evaluated, judged. She could feel it. Some dismissed her outright. Others smirked quietly, already rehearsing the jokes they'd share when she missed her first shot. At the registration tent, the officer barely glanced up. Air Force, don't recognize the unit. You sure you're in the right place? She gave a simple nod. Words weren't worth the energy. She signed her name and received her number, 53, last position. The most difficult slot of the day, where wind, fatting light, and fatigue punished even the most hardened shooters. She didn't protest. She just walked. And when she opened her case, that's when the laughter began. Inside wasn't the expected flat black rifle with matte attachments and combat scars. It was a weapon unlike anything on the range that day, a precision-engineered AXMC rifle, perfectly tuned, every bolt and rail gleaming with care. But more than that, it was painted bright pink. Not scratched or half-finished. Not a gimmick spray job. A flawless, deliberate pink. The sound of laughter rippled across the preparation line. "Is this bring your daughter to work day?" one voice called out. Barbie brought her toy rifle, someone else shouted to more laughter. Even the seasoned Staff Sergeant Miller, a man whose 3 tours in Afghanistan and 2 in Iraq made him a small legend on his own, smirked as he leaned toward his group. "War doesn't come in pretty colors," he said loud enough for all to hear. The crowd erupted again, but didn't respond. Her hands worked silently, methodically, assembling her weapon with the practiced precision of a surgeon. Each click of metal into place was unhurried, unbothered by the noise around her. They didn't notice how flawless her form was. They didn't notice the calm in her breathing, the economy of her movements. They didn't see what her father, a Marine who had lived and bled combat, had once told her when he caught her practicing as a teenager. "Kid, you move like you were born for this. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." That memory lingered as the jeers rolled off her back. Captain, the range officer, finally called the group to attention. His voice was the kind that didn't need volume to command obedience. "And lady," his nod toward was brief but respectful, "welcome to the 36th Annual Precision Championship. Targets at 800, 1200, 2000, 3000, 4000, 5000. And for the finalists, the never-before-hit 6,200-meter shot." Murmurs buzzed instantly. 4 miles, nearly impossible, a distance where physics began to mock human ability. When added, competitors will fire in reverse order of registration. Heads turned toward her. Lieutenant, number 53, the one with the pink rifle, she would fire first every round. Every eye would be on her, every mistake. She walked to her station. She didn't hear the whispers. She didn't hear the bets being placed. $10 she wouldn't hit 800 meters, 20 she wouldn't make it past 12. What she did hear was the steady rhythm of her own breath. In, out, in, out. Her hand brushed against the small pink pendant hidden beneath her collar, a tiny weight that reminded her why she was here. She settled onto the mat, her body aligning with the weapon as if they were one. She whispered numbers under her breath, not the kind in standard sniper manuals. No, these were deeper, layers of calculation most didn't even know existed. Spin drift, effect, micro-pressure changes in the morning air. "Shooter ready?" asked. His eyes narrowed, a half exhale, fingers settling on the trigger. "Send it when ready." Silence. The shot cracked like lightning, echoing across the range. A heartbeat later, the spotter called out, surprise betraying his normally flat tone. "Center mass, perfect hit." The laughter died, heads turned. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She simply chambered another round with mechanical calm, as though the result was inevitable. "Beginner's luck," one of the men muttered, but no one laughed this time. When the 1,200-meter stage came, she repeated her ritual. 3 breaths, half exhale, gentle squeeze, another center hit. Perfect. No hesitation. Whispers spread like wildfire. Luck didn't happen twice in succession. Something else was at work here, something unnerving. For the shot triggered memory. She was 17 again, standing shoulder to shoulder with her twin sister Sophie at a civilian range. Both of them competing, laughing, their father watching quietly. "Your turn, Soph," had said, grinning. Sophie's reply had been pure challenge. "Watch and learn, Em." And she'd hit dead center just like always. The memory faded, leaving only silence and her steady breathing on the range. By the 2,000-meter stage, the field thinned. A third of the shooters missed entirely. Wind picked up, gnawing at confidence. But she fired and the target fell, perfect again. Her notes were complex, more like engineering schematics than a shooter's wind chart. Miller caught a glimpse and frowned. He'd seen hundreds of shooters, but never like this. The veterans in the crowd began to stir uneasily. An old man in a wheelchair leaned forward, his voice just audible. "I've seen that before, not since '91. Miller heard, his jaw tightened. Something wasn't adding up. 3,000 meters, 5,000. Each stage escalated the tension. Each shot made carved silence into the range. Men who had entered the day brimming with pride now looked on with narrowed eyes, their confidence eroded by the woman with the pink rifle who refused to miss. And yet she didn't gloat. She didn't revel in it. Every time she rose from her position with the same controlled expression, as if the only thing that mattered was not her opponents, not the crowd, not even the score, but something else. Something unspoken. Something she carried alone. By the time the final stage loomed, the 4-mile shot no one believed possible, the laughter was gone. In its place hung a heavy silence, charged with disbelief, suspicion, and the undeniable pull of mystery. Who was she? Where had she learned this? And why did the pink pendant at her neck seem to matter more than the rifle in her hands? But she wasn't ready to tell them. Not yet. What made him keep watching her when he should have been focused on his own rifle? Why did each shot she fired feel less like competition and more like revelation? By the time the competitors reached the 3,000-meter stage, the energy on the range had shifted. Gone was the joking, the casual arrogance, the half-muttered bets about how quickly she would fail. In its place was silence, the kind that creeps into a room when people realize they've underestimated something or someone beyond measure. Sat cross-legged on the dirt between rounds, her waterproof notebook open across her lap. Her handwriting was precise, lines of formulas and adjustments streaming like coded poetry across the page. Miller caught glimpses of it from where he sat with his circle. It wasn't the kind of chart any sniper school taught. It was something else, something advanced, layered, frighteningly exact. "What's she even writing?" one of the younger shooters asked. Miller scowled. "Not standard wind charts, something different. I've never seen half those calculations." The old man in the wheelchair, the one who had been watching her closely all day, leaned toward his companion. "The Bishop technique," he whispered. "Restricted training. Special operations only. Miller heard that too, his jaw clenched. Special operations. But if that was true, why hadn't he heard of her? He'd known every female shooter who had seen combat in the last decade. None of them were named. He watched her fingers brush against her pendant again, the tiny pink charm she carried like a talisman. She touched it unconsciously, every time before settling behind her rifle. It wasn't vanity. It wasn't decoration. It meant something. At 3,000 meters, the wind clawed at the bullets. Even seasoned shooters struggled to find rhythm. Some missed completely. Miller made his shot, respectable, just off-center, but enough to keep him in. He rose to nods of approval from his followers. And then took her place. Her ritual shifted. Not 3 breaths, but 5 shallow, 1 deep, a half-exhale pause. Her weapon lay perfectly still in her arms, as if weight itself had no effect on her control. Her pink rifle barked once. The spotter's voice cracked with disbelief. Center hit, again. Miller froze. His stomach tightened with something unfamiliar. It wasn't just competition anymore. It was suspicion. He walked to her water station during the break, deliberately intercepting her path. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" His tone wasn't casual anymore. It was edged, probing. She met his eyes evenly, her voice calm. "Here and there." "Don't recall seeing your name on any combat rosters." "Perhaps you weren't looking in the right places." "There aren't many places where women serve as snipers," Miller pressed. Her expression barely shifted, but he caught it, the flicker of caution. "Times change, Sergeant." "That breathing pattern, that's not standard Air Force. Where'd you get it?" His lips pressed into the thinnest line. "We all develop our own methods." But Miller wasn't convinced. His suspicion gnawed at him like a wound. He wanted to push harder, but Captain called shooters to the line again. Still, Miller noticed something else, the way her notebook slipped from her lap as she rose. The way he stooped quickly, flipping a page before she noticed. A sketch in the margin, an insignia, wings and a dagger, and beneath it, S7P. His pulse jumped. He'd heard whispers of Sierra 7, a program so classified it was practically myth. Operators trained to extend human limitation. Shooters who could make the impossible possible. But it wasn't real. It couldn't be real. He handed the notebook back silently. Their eyes met. No words, but something shifted between them. At 4,000 meters, only 5 competitors remained. Shot was flawless again, her pink rifle striking with the certainty of a scalpel. Miller's hit too, though not center. But he barely noticed. His mind was elsewhere now, circling that sketch, those letters. S7P. As the break stretched, the old veteran wheeled himself closer, speaking low to Miller. "Son, there are programs you don't read about, programs you don't want to read about. Sierra 7 trains shooters for shots no one else can make. The kind where if you miss, people die. The kind where extraction isn't possible. I've seen their work. Once. A long time ago. Never forgot it." Miller's mouth went dry. "And you think she's one of them?" The veteran's gaze never left. "Watch her. You already know the answer." The storm began to gather as the competitors prepared for the 5,000-meter stage. Clouds thickened, winds rose, visibility narrowed. For most shooters it was a nightmare, for it was just another variable. She ran her calculations faster, her pencil scratching across the page in numbers no one else understood. Her breathing slowed into that strange, meditative rhythm again. She looked almost serene as the wind ripped across the range. She fired. And once again, impossibly, the spotter called. "Center hit." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "That's not human." Captain glanced toward a silver-haired man who had arrived quietly at the edge of the range. His bearing was unmistakable, a general, even without insignia. He gave the faintest nod when shot landed, scribbled something quickly on his clipboard. Miller's mind raced. A general, an unknown insignia, a pink rifle making shots no one else could. It wasn't just a competition anymore. It was something bigger. He confronted her again, louder this time. "That rifle, that color, there's a story there, isn't there?" Her hand moved instinctively to her pendant. For the first time, her voice trembled just slightly. "There is, but not one I'm sharing today." Miller's voice rose, carrying to the others. "Nobody shoots like this without combat experience. Nobody, so who are you really?" The range fell into silence, every eye shifting toward her. Looked at him steadily. "You're right, Sergeant Miller. Nobody who's never seen combat shoots like this." The implication hung in the air like a loaded chamber. The wind howled across the range. Clouds rolled dark. Thunder rumbled in the distance. But the silence that followed her words carried more weight than any storm. Something was unraveling, and it was only the beginning. Why hadn't she walked away when the storm rolled in? Why did she stay kneeling in the mud, her pink rifle steady against winds that shredded lesser shooters? The 5,000-meter stage was supposed to break them all. Even Miller felt his chest tighten as the gusts clawed at the targets, as the sky pressed lower, heavy and bruised with thunder. These weren't just difficult conditions. They were punishing. The kind no sane sniper would volunteer to shoot in. But didn't ask for a delay. She didn't even blink. She opened her notebook, pages flapping in the wind, and scribbled calculations that looked like madness to the untrained eye. "Those numbers don't even make sense," muttered beside Miller, squinting. Miller said nothing. His eyes stayed locked on her hands, steady as stone. He'd been in firefights where men couldn't keep their fingers still enough to reload. She moved like the weather itself bowed to her rhythm. When she fired, the shot cut through the storm like a blade. A heartbeat later, the spotter's voice cracked over the silence. "Target, dead center." Gasps, murmurs, a low whistle from someone who had mocked her only hours before. Miller's stomach turned, not from jealousy, not anymore, from realization. He'd seen great shooters. He'd been one. But this was beyond human. And yet there she was, calm as rain, sliding another round into the chamber with the same quiet efficiency as before. His turn came. He set his scope, made his adjustments, and fought the gusts with every ounce of experience he had. His shot landed within the ring, not center, but close enough to draw nods of respect. Under these conditions, it was impressive. But beside hers, it felt like a child's effort. Leaned in, whispering low. "Sarge, I found something. Sierra 7, mentioned in a redacted document, some kind of program extending human limitations in precision engagements." Miller stiffened, his suspicions crystallized. She wasn't just another competitor, she was something else. Something from a world most soldiers never touched. When the round ended, Captain called for a short break. Competitors gathered in hushed clusters, whispering theories. Sat alone, water bottle at her side, notebook open again. A solitary figure against the backdrop of tension. Miller couldn't help himself. He walked over, his boots crunching on the gravel. "That pink rifle," he said, his voice pitched low. "You didn't paint it to make a statement, did you? There's a story." Her hand moved again, brushing her pendant. This time her composure cracked for just an instant. Her lips parted, a whisper. "It's for her." Miller frowned. "Her." But before she could answer, voice cut through the moment. 6,200-meter stage begins in 10 minutes. Shooters prepare. The air seemed to thicken. This was it, the impossible distance. Nearly 4 miles, a shot that lived only in theory. Master Sergeant Dawson, a grizzled Marine with a reputation nearly as iron as Miller's, stepped up first. He breathed deep, adjusted carefully, and fired. The shot missed completely. Respectable under the conditions, but a miss all the same. Miller's turn came. He poured everything into it, every lesson from Iraq, every adjustment learned the hard way in Afghanistan, every instinct honed by years of combat. His round struck the outer edge of the target, not center, not clean, but a hit. The crowd erupted, applause thundered. It was, under these conditions, a near miracle. Miller rose, pride brimming in his chest. He looked at as if daring her. Beat that. She walked forward, the storm tugging at her jacket, rain beginning to spit against the dirt. Lightning flashed far off. She didn't wait for the gusts to calm. She didn't stall. She scribbled 3 more furious lines of calculations, flipped her notebook closed, and settled behind the pink rifle. Her breathing shifted again, not the 3 count, not the 5, something else, something deeper, slower, a rhythm so controlled it looked like meditation. Shooter ready. She didn't answer, she didn't need to. The shot rang out, a crack swallowed instantly by the storm. For 3 long seconds, nothing. Then, faint and impossible, the metallic ping carried back across the range. "Center mass," the spotter shouted, his voice breaking. The crowd froze. For a moment no one breathed, and then silence swallowed them whole. Not applause, not laughter, just silence. Rose, the pink rifle still cradled in her arms, calm as if nothing had happened. But as the wind ripped her jacket aside, Miller saw it, the tattoo on her forearm. The same insignia sketched in her notebook. Wings, a dagger, a mark whispered about only in rumor. His blood ran cold. She's Tier 1. The silver-haired general stepped forward from the shadows at the edge of the range, his eyes on her alone. He spoke words too low for others to hear, but Miller caught the look, the kind of look commanders gave only to their best, their most trusted, their most dangerous. Thunder cracked overhead. The storm matched the weight pressing down on the range. This wasn't just a competition anymore. This was revelation. The ceremony was delayed. Officially, it was due to weather. Unofficially, everyone knew something had shifted. Competitors clustered under canopies, whispering about what they'd seen. Miller couldn't stop watching her. He approached the old veteran again, voice tense. "That insignia on her arm, Sierra 7, isn't it?" The veteran studied him. "You don't want to ask questions you're not ready to hear answers to." "I need to know." The old man sighed. "Sierra 7 doesn't exist, not on paper, but in the real world. They're the ones who take the impossible shots, the ones you never hear about, the ones where failure means an entire team doesn't come home." Miller's chest tightened, and she's one of them. The veteran's gaze turned back to, who sat silently cleaning her rifle, pink paint gleaming under. "She's not just one of them. She's their best." Miller felt his certainty collapse, piece by piece. Every smug laugh he'd made at her expense, every assumption, every dismissive thought. He'd spent years thinking combat tour gave him the right to look down on shooters who hadn't been there. And now he realized he might have been standing beside someone who lived in a world even he couldn't comprehend. But if she was Sierra 7, then why was she here? Why the pink rifle? Why the pendant she clutched like a lifeline? The questions pressed against him, like the storm pressing against the range. He didn't know the answers, not yet. But soon he would. And they might cost him everything he thought he knew about what it meant to be a soldier. Why did the storm seem to follow her? Why did every lightning flash feel less like weather and more like revelation? The official results ceremony was supposed to be a moment of celebration, but nobody cared about medals anymore. Nobody cared about rank order, or whether Dawson had outshot Miller at 3,000 meters, or whether would brag about hitting his 1,200 mark. All eyes had shifted. All conversations circled the same name. Yes. She stood apart from the clusters of competitors, alone beneath a dripping canopy, methodically drying the pink rifle with a cloth. Her motions were as calm as they'd been all day, unbothered, patient. But Miller couldn't stop staring at her forearm where the jacket had flared open. The insignia was burned into his memory. Wings, dagger, sharp lines stitched with secrecy. Not just a tattoo, a confession. And yet, no one else seemed ready to say it aloud. Miller stepped forward, his boots squelching in the wet ground. His voice came low, hard. "You're not a lieutenant, are you?" She looked up, her blue eyes steady. "Why do you think that?" That shot, 6,200 meters, it's not just skill, it's not just practice. Nobody can make that shot without something else. Training, access, programs. He leaned closer. I've heard the name, Sierra 7. Her gaze flickered, the briefest crack like lightning in the dark. Then it was gone. She returned to drying the rifle. Don't believe everything you hear in whispers, Sergeant. But his gut told him otherwise. Before he could press further, Voice called the competitors to gather. His tone was different now, clipped, formal, almost wary. Due to extraordinary circumstances, final results are under review. We will announce standings shortly. In the meantime, remain in the designated area. The murmurs began again. Some complained, others speculated. But Miller noticed something else. The way eyes kept flicking toward the silver-haired man, the general who had appeared during the storm. The two conferred quietly, their voices masked by thunder. Every so often the general's gaze cut back to, calculating, measuring. Miller's stomach churned. This wasn't about medals. This was something else entirely. He approached the old veteran once more. What's going on here? The man chuckled without humor. Son, you're standing in the middle of an assessment you were never meant to see. Assessment for what? The veteran's eyes gleamed. For her, maybe for you too. Miller stiffened. What do you mean? But before the veteran could answer, Captain Voice cracked through the rain again. Competitors Miller and stepped forward. The crowd shifted instantly. The atmosphere thickened, charged. Rose smoothly, pink rifle slung at her side. Miller followed, his chest tight with unease. Address them both. Given your exceptional performance, Command has authorized an additional round. The SOCOM verification protocol. Gasps, whispers. Miller froze. He knew the name. Everyone did. It wasn't supposed to appear here at a competition. The SOCOM protocol was an evaluation course, combat replication. Dynamic movement, extreme range, stress firing, time pressure. It was brutal. It was military only. Civilians never touched it. This wasn't competition anymore. This was exposure. His face betrayed nothing, but her hand brushed against her pendant again. Miller caught it, the first sign of hesitation he'd seen in her all day. You may decline without penalty, continued, his gaze lingering on. Your standing will remain. But's voice came steady, unwavering. I accept. A low murmur swept through the crowd. Miller clenched his jaw. He had no choice but to match her. So do I. Nodded sharply, then prepare. The range transformed, targets repositioned, timers set. The rain didn't stop and didn't care. Combat doesn't wait for clear skies, he barked. Protocol begins in 10. Miller checked his rifle, hands moving automatically, but his eyes drifted toward. For the first time, he studied the rifle itself. It wasn't a gimmick, not just pink paint. The wear told the truth, scratches along the rails, chips in the coating, subtle grooves at the grip. This weapon had been used, in the field. And suddenly he understood. The rifle wasn't a statement, it was a legacy. The old veteran wheeled closer, his voice low but cutting through the storm. Watch her now, Sergeant. You'll see what Sierra 7 really means. Miller swallowed hard. And what's that? The veteran's gaze never left, doing the impossible, because failure isn't an option. The SOCOM protocol began with a horn blast. Miller launched into the course, his combat instincts snapping awake. Mud sucked at his boots as he moved between firing positions, dropping to prone, firing, rising, sprinting again. His shots were solid, 4 of 5 targets hit cleanly. He missed the final extreme distance round, his bullet carving into dirt just meters shy. Still, it was one of the best runs he'd ever made. The crowd roared approval. But when moved, the difference was immediate. She didn't run, she flowed. Each transition was seamless, each drop to prone executed as if gravity itself obeyed her timing. Her breathing never shifted despite exertion. Every shot cracked in perfect rhythm, each target falling cleanly. and at the final mark, 6,500 meters, she paused. Her hand brushed her pendant again. For an instant, emotion flickered across her face, grief, determination, memory. Miller froze, even as he watched through his scope. Her rifle barked. Perfect hit. Silence consumed the range. Even thunder seemed to hush. Voice broke the quiet. Assessment complete. The general stepped forward, speaking just loud enough for those nearby. Operational clearance confirmed. Major. Miller's chest seized. Major. Her disguise unraveled in a single word. She rose, no longer the quiet, underestimated lieutenant. Her posture shifted subtly, command presence radiating, undeniable. The crowd erupted in murmurs, shock rippling outward, but Miller's mind spun faster than theirs. Major, Sierra 7, the pink rifle, the pendant, who the hell was she? His gaze swept the range, landing finally on him. Not smug, not gloating, just steady, almost understanding. And in that look, Miller realized the truth he hadn't wanted to face. He hadn't been competing against another shooter. He'd been standing in the shadow of someone forged in fire he couldn't imagine. Someone who didn't just win competitions. Someone who lived missions no one else could. The storm lashed harder. The sky broke open with lightning, but stood steady, pink rifle gleaming, as though the chaos itself was her natural element. And Miller knew his world had just changed forever. Why did the atmosphere shift so suddenly? Why did the sound of approaching rotors feel like the real beginning of the day? The range was no longer a range. It was a staging ground. The competitors, once laughing, now stood in uneasy clusters as unmarked vehicles pulled up in the storm. Men in nondescript gear unloaded communications crates, heavy cases, weatherproof tents. This wasn't ceremony. This was deployment. Miller felt the ground tilt beneath him. He thought he was at a shooting competition. Now, as uniformed personnel moved with urgency, he realized the truth. The event had been camouflage. Major stood at a tactical station now, pink rifle resting in its case, her eyes locked on satellite imagery projected on a ruggedized screen. The silver-haired general hovered beside her, his presence undeniable now. General. Everyone in the special operations community knew the name. Few had ever seen him. Miller approached slowly, the storm pressing hard on his shoulders. He caught fragments of their conversation. Extraction compromised, anti-aircraft in the valley's team stranded on the ridge. His hand traced along the map, calm, methodical, distance. 6,800 meters, primary threat at the cave mouth, secondary patrols at 5-2 and 4-6. Miller's throat tightened, 6,800. Turned, eyes locking onto him. Sergeant Miller stepped forward. Miller stiffened, sir. His voice carried weight that left no room for hesitation. Your service record is commendable. 3 combat tour, confirmed kills, adaptability under stress. Major has recommended you as secondary shooter. Will you volunteer? Miller's mind reeled. Sir, I'm not qualified. Cut him off, her voice low but commanding. He's not, but he has what's required. Instinct, adaptation. I can't fire both lines alone. He'll handle secondary, I'll take primary. Miller looked at her, stunned. You're serious? She met his gaze. I don't joke about lives, Sergeant. He saw it then. Not arrogance, not performance. The weight in her eyes was heavier than the storm pressing down on them. This wasn't about medals or proving doubters wrong. This was about lives, real ones. Men stranded on a ridge in hostile country with the clock running out. Miller straightened, voice steady. I'm in. Gave a curt nod. Wheels up in 20. Chaos erupted. Gear was distributed, radios tested, rifles checked. The competitors who had once jeered at now watched in stunned silence as the pink rifle was prepped alongside military-grade black hardware. It didn't look out of place anymore. If anything, it looked like the centerpiece. Sidled up to Miller, face pale. "Sarge, what's happening?" Miller's voice came firm. "You didn't see anything, you don't know anything, this never happened." "But that's in order." Swallowed hard, nodding. "Yes, Sergeant." The helicopter blades tore at the storm as they lifted off. Inside the cabin, red light bathed the gear, the faces. Miller sat opposite, watching as she ran her hand along the pink rifle's barrel. Near the stock, faint engraving caught the light. A name. Sophie. She whispered under her breath, "We're bringing them home." Miller almost asked, but the look on her face stopped him. It wasn't the look of someone remembering. It was the look of someone promising. Minutes stretched heavy in the roar of the storm, briefed them quickly. Team stranded, 2 Rangers wounded, hostile patrols closing, air support impossible. You will provide overwatch suppression for extraction. If you fail, we lose them. Miller nodded. His combat brain began mapping. Distances, timing. He'd done overwatch before, but never like this. Never at these ranges. Though didn't flinch. She scribbled into her notebook, page after page of calculations. Spin, drift, density, altitude, humidity, each number layered on the next until it looked like madness. Miller leaned forward, his voice low. "That rifle, it's not just for show, is it?" Her eyes softened for the briefest moment. "It's my sister's design. She drafted every modification. Barrel harmonics, nanotube lining, recoil dampeners, the pink. That was her idea. Said if we were going to do the impossible, we might as well look good doing it." Miller blinked. "Your sister, she was Sierra 7. His gaze dropped to the pendant at her neck. She whispered, barely audible, "She was PJ, Operation Kingfisher. She didn't come back." The words hit Miller like a round to the chest. He remembered the name. The failed op whispered about in debriefs, redacted in reports. A sniper couldn't make the shot. A team didn't come home. Miller looked at the pink rifle again. Suddenly it wasn't strange. It wasn't ridiculous. It was grief made steel, legacy painted into metal. He realized then that wasn't carrying a weapon. She was carrying a promise. Dawn broke gray over the mountains. The helicopter banked low, skimming, before setting them down on a narrow shelf overlooking the valley. Rain lashed against their faces as they scrambled into position. Through the high-powered scope, Miller saw them, 5 Americans dug in on a ridge nearly 7 kilometers away. 2 wounded, bleeding. 3 holding defensive positions with dwindling ammo. Around them, enemy fighters closed like wolves. His voice cut steady against the wind. Primary target, cave mouth, 6 tangos, distance 6823. Secondary patrols at 5247 and 4685. You take ridge leaders, I handle the cave. Miller swallowed. That's 6 shots for you, at nearly 7,000 meters, in a storm. Her voice was calm, absolute. 4 seconds, that's how long I have before they scatter. I won't need more. He stared at her, disbelief clawing at his chest, but her eyes never wavered, and something inside him shifted. He believed her. Against all reason, he believed her. The radio crackled. Sierra actual to overwatch, extraction inbound, green light. Adjusted her scope, breath steadying into the strange rhythm Miller now recognized as classified. The Bishop technique. Her voice dropped, quiet but firm. On my mark, 3, 2, 1, execute. Miller fired. Both ridge leaders fell before the echo of his shots even reached them. His rifle cracked 6 times in machine-like sequence. Through his scope, Miller watched in stunned silence as 6 enemies at the cave dropped one after another, each shot impossibly precise. Silence, then his own voice raw in his throat, all targets neutralized. Spoken to the radio, voice steady. Area secure, proceed with extraction. Through his scope, Miller watched the helicopter descend. Wounded loaded first, then the rest. The last to board, a tall PJ, paused, turning to face their direction across the impossible distance. Though he couldn't see details, Miller knew the gesture. A salute. Lowered her rifle. Her hand brushed her pendant, and for the first time all day her composure broke. Miller realized then, this wasn't just a mission, it was family. They broke down gear in silence, the storm finally beginning to thin. Miller glanced at her. She was different now. No longer just the mysterious competitor with a pink rifle. She was something else, something heavier. He cleared his throat. "Major, your sister, the pendant, the rifle, that's why you're here, isn't it?" She looked at him, rain dripping from her hair, eyes fierce and fragile all at once. "I promised her I finish what we started. She couldn't make the shot. I will never let that happen again." Miller nodded slowly, the weight of it pressing against his chest. For the first time he understood. And in that moment, standing on a rain-slick ridge with dawn breaking gray over the mountains, he realized he wasn't just in the presence of a soldier. He was standing beside a legend being written in real time. Why did silence feel louder than the storm itself? Why did the world seem to hold its breath after the impossible had already been done? The helicopter lifted from the ridge, carrying the rescue team into the gray morning. Its thundering blades faded into distance, leaving only the hiss of rain and the smell of gunpowder. And Miller remained prone on the high ground, their rifles cooling in the damp air. Miller rolled onto his back, staring at the slate sky. His heart still hammered in his chest, not from exertion but from disbelief. He replayed the last minutes in his mind, trying to convince himself he hadn't imagined it. 6 shots, 6 impossible hits, 7 kilometers, 4 seconds. He shook his head slowly, a rough laugh escaping him. That shouldn't have been possible. Didn't answer. She was already disassembling her rifle, hands moving with the same calm precision as ever. To her, it wasn't extraordinary. It was expected. Miller sat up, watching her. "You realize what you just did, right? Nobody on Earth could have made those shots. Nobody but you." Her gaze lifted briefly, blue eyes steady, unreadable. "I didn't do it for recognition, Sergeant." He frowned. "Then why?" Her hand drifted to the pink pendant at her neck. She hesitated. For the first time her voice softened, raw at the edges. "For her." Miller nodded slowly. "Your sister." His jaw tightened. "She was the better shooter, the smarter one. I just followed her lead. Operation Kingfisher was her mission. She should have come home, but their sniper missed the shot. She paid the price." Miller's chest tightened. He'd lost friends in combat, but to hear it put that way, blunt, unvarnished, hit differently. "So you carry her rifle." "I carry her promise." Eyes returned to the pendant. That no one else would be left behind because someone couldn't do the impossible. Silence settled between them, heavy with unspoken things. By the time they hiked back to the landing zone, the storm had broken into scattered drizzle. A transport awaited, rotors whining low. Inside, General stood at a tactical table, Captain beside him, both men reviewing live feeds from the completed extraction. His gaze snapped up when entered. He gave the faintest nod, approval without flourish. "Major, mission success confirmed. Outstanding work." She simply replied, "Personnel are alive. That's all that matters." His eyes shifted to Miller. "Sergeant, your performance exceeded expectation." Miller stiffened. "Sir, with respect, I only followed her lead." His tone sharpened. "Don't diminish it. Adaptability under fire, precision under stress. That's why you were chosen. Major may be Sierra 7, but even she doesn't operate alone." Miller blinked, uneasy. "Chosen, sir, what exactly was today?" Exchanged a look with before answering. "An assessment. The competition was the cover. The mission was the purpose. Both of you were being evaluated." Miller's mouth went dry. "Evaluated for what?" His voice cut in quietly. "Sierra 7. His stomach dropped. "You're saying?" Interrupted. "I'm saying the program is expanding. Major leads operational testing. She recommended you for consideration." Miller stared at her, disbelief warring with the memory of her words earlier. "Our line of work." Met his gaze without apology. You proved yourself." "I wasn't competing," he said sharply. "Yes, you were," countered. "You just didn't know it." Miller felt the ground shift beneath him. For years, he had measured himself by combat tour, by scars earned in deserts and mountains, by stories told over cheap beer with men who hadn't made it back. And now, standing in the presence of a woman who had just redefined human limits, he realized the truth. His battlefield wasn't the top. It was just the surface. Hours later, the base buzzed with rumors. Officially, the Precision Championship had ended with an unexpected weather cancellation. Unofficially, the story was already spreading. A woman with a pink rifle had made the impossible shot. Details blurred, twisted, exaggerated in whispers, but the core truth remained. Ignored the chatter. She sat alone in the armory, methodically cleaning her rifle. The cloth moved across the pink barrel with something more than maintenance. It was ritual, reverence. Miller found her there. He hesitated in the doorway before stepping inside. "Major." She didn't look up. "You can still call me Lieutenant. That's all anyone else will ever know." Miller leaned against the wall. "Not me, I saw it." "Then you understand why it stays hidden." He nodded. Silence stretched, broken only by the rhythmic scrape of cloth on metal. Finally, he asked, "Why me? There were other shooters, some technically better. Why did you push to pick me?" His hands stilled. For a long moment she didn't answer. Then she spoke softly, as though weighing every word. "Because you adapt, you question, you push back when something doesn't add up. That's rare. Sierra 7 doesn't need perfect shots. We need people who won't freeze when the textbook fails." Miller exhaled slowly. "And you think I'm one of those people?" Her eyes lifted, meeting his. "I know you are." Something in her tone struck deeper than rank or command. It wasn't flattery. It was certainty. Miller swallowed hard, looking at the rifle on the table. "I thought I understood this world, but today I realized I've been living in its shadows." His gaze softened slightly. "Shadows are where Sierra 7 lives, where we make sure others get to stay in the light." For the first time since the mission, Miller allowed himself to feel it, not fear, not suspicion, but respect. Deep, unshakable respect. That night the rescued personnel were debriefed, their survival credited to specialized long-range support. No names, no specifics, no pink rifles. Miller sat outside the barracks, the storm finally gone, the night heavy with stars. He turned a flask in his hands, thinking of the men alive because of 2 rifles on a distant ridge. He thought of his own pride, the arrogance that had made him mock her hours before, and he thought of the look in her eyes when she whispered for her. He didn't notice approach until she sat beside him. She didn't speak at first, just let the silence stretch. Finally she said, "You did well today." Miller huffed a laugh. "You did the impossible, I just tried to keep up." "You did more than that." He shook his head. "Still feels like I don't belong in your world." His voice grew soft, almost reflective. "Nobody ever feels like they belong in Sierra 7. That's the point. If you think you do, you've already failed." Miller turned to her. "And you, do you feel like you belong?" Her gaze drifted to the pendant at her neck. For the first time her voice cracked. "No, but I don't have a choice." The weight of her words hung heavy in the night. Miller realized then that beneath the precision, the calm, the near superhuman control, she was still human, still a sister grieving, still someone carrying a burden too heavy to set down. And he understood something else. Sierra 7 didn't just make legends, it made sacrifices. The kind nobody else would ever see. The next morning, General summoned Miller to his office. The conversation was brief, direct. "You have a choice, Sergeant. Stay in your world, continue as you are, or step into hers." Miller hesitated only a moment. His answer was quiet but firm. "I'm in." Studied him, then nodded. "Selection begins soon. You won't like it, few do. But if you succeed, you'll never see the world the same again." As Miller left the office, he caught sight of across the compound, her rifle case in hand, the pink paint catching the morning sun. Their eyes met. She didn't smile. She didn't nod. She simply looked at him, and in that look he understood. She wasn't offering him glory. She was offering him burden. And somehow he wanted it. Why did the training grounds feel colder than the battlefield? Why did silence, not gunfire, cut deeper here? Miller had thought he understood selection. He'd survived Special Forces qualification. He'd endured deserts, mountains, the gutting weight of rucks and the cruel indifference of cadre who pushed until men broke. But Sierra 7's assessment was something else entirely. It began not with shouting but with silence, not with orders barked but with tasks whispered. Candidates moved through nights without sleep, days without end, their senses warped by constant uncertainty. Targets appeared and vanished at impossible distances. Timers ticked down without warning. One failure and men disappeared, gone without explanation, as though they'd never been there at all. Miller lasted, though barely. He moved, he adapted, he fought his own disbelief when the demands exceeded reason. But always in the distance he saw her. Not leading from the front like a drill master, not yelling or punishing, she watched, calm, composed, notebook in hand. Her eyes studied every breath, every twitch, every hesitation. And when men broke, when they slammed their rifles down in frustration, or when fatigue dragged them into mistakes, she didn't jeer. She didn't scold. She just wrote. And those men were gone by nightfall. Miller hated how much he craved her approval. One exercise pushed him past his limits. They lay prone on a cold ridge at dawn, scopes fogging, hands numb. The cadre's voice came quiet over the comms. Target, 6,000 meters. Variable wind, 90 seconds, execute. Miller blinked into the scope, heart hammering. 6,000 meters, 90 seconds. He'd never attempted anything like it. His instincts screamed to delay, to wait for the wind to break. But the clock ticked. He fired, missed wide. Breath heaving, he cycled another round, made frantic adjustments. Fired again. Miss. His hands trembled. Time slipped away. "Cease fire," the cadre called. Miller cursed under his breath, slamming his fist into the dirt. His pride shattered. He'd failed. He heard footsteps approach. Knelt beside him, pink rifle cradled easily in her arms. She said nothing at first, just studied the wind. Then, softly, "Breathe, Sergeant." "I missed both shots," he muttered bitterly. "Breathe." Her tone carried no judgment, no pity, just calm certainty. Against his will, he obeyed, inhaling slow, exhaling slower. She settled beside him, opened her notebook and turned it so he could see. Lines of numbers scrawled across the page. "This is what you were missing. Density, altitude, shift, variation." Miller frowned, struggling to absorb it. Nobody calculates this in the field. Her eyes met his. "That's why people die." She shifted, shouldered her rifle, and in one smooth motion fired a single shot. Through his scope, Miller saw the impossible again, a perfect center hit. His stomach twisted. How do you always make it?" His voice softened. "I don't, not always, but I make sure when it matters I do." He wanted to ask more, about her sister, about what failure looked like in her world. But she rose before he could, notebook tucked away, leaving only the echo of her words. "When it matters." The days blurred, fatigue ate at him, pride eroded. But each time he faltered, he remembered her voice. "Breathe." Each time he doubted, he saw her steady hand on the pink rifle, a reminder that the impossible wasn't out of reach, it was demanded. Other candidates broke. Some walked out under their own power, some were carried. Miller endured, barely. Until one night during a navigation test when the exhaustion nearly broke him. Alone in the dark woods, rain pouring, his compass unreadable, he slumped against a tree. His chest heaved, his legs screamed, his pride whispered, "Quit. Nobody will blame you. Nobody survives this forever." Then he heard a voice in the dark, soft, female, calm. "Get up, Sergeant." He looked up, stood there, rain dripping from her hair, her presence impossible and yet undeniable. She wasn't supposed to be there, but she was. "You don't belong here," he rasped bitterly. "Neither did I," she replied, "but I stayed for her." Her hand touched her pendant. The pink charm glowed faintly in the moonlight. "Why me?" he asked, desperation in his voice. She studied him for a long moment. "Because you fight yourself harder than you fight the target. Sierra 7 doesn't need perfect shooters. We need those who win the war inside before they fire." Her words cut through the exhaustion like a blade. He forced himself to stand, to move, to keep going. By dawn, he was the last candidate left on his route. Weeks passed. One by one, the others fell away until only Miller remained. At the final assessment, himself appeared. His eyes swept the range, the valley, the exhausted man kneeling in the mud. "Sergeant Miller," said, his voice sharp as iron, "you've endured, you've adapted, you've survived. Welcome to Sierra 7 selection." Miller's chest heaved. Relief mingled with disbelief. He'd made it. But his gaze shifted to, standing a few paces away, her expression unreadable. She gave no smile, no nod, only the faintest flicker in her eyes, something between approval and warning. Because selection wasn't an ending, it was a door, and he had just stepped through it. That night Miller sat alone, staring at his hands, calloused, shaking. He'd proven himself, but at what cost? Approached quietly, setting her rifle down beside him. The pink paint gleamed under the dim lights. "You're one of us now," she said softly. Miller shook his head. "I don't know if I'm ready." Her gaze drifted to her pendant. "Neither did I, neither was she. But sometimes readiness doesn't matter, only resolve." He swallowed hard. "And what if resolve isn't enough?" Her eyes met his, steady, unwavering. "Then you fight anyway, because someone out there depends on you, and because if you don't, no one else will." The words sank deep, heavier than any ruck, any rifle, any storm. He realized then what Sierra 7 demanded: not perfection, not glory. Sacrifice. And as he sat there, shoulder to shoulder with the woman who had redefined everything he thought possible, he understood. Wasn't just carrying a rifle. She was carrying the weight of her sister's ghost. And now so was he. Why did the call come so soon? Why did it feel like the training was never meant to end, only to prepare for this exact moment? The base was silent when the transport landed at midnight. No fanfare, no briefings, just the thrum of rotors and the knowledge that Sierra 7 didn't move unless lives were already hanging in the balance. Stood on the tarmac, pink rifle case at her side, pendant glinting faintly in the floodlights. Her posture was calm, but Miller had learned to see past the calm, the tightness in her jaw, the way her thumb brushed against the charm, as if grounding herself. Approached them, his voice low, urgent. "Extraction team pinned. Eastern Mountains. Hostile forces massing. Air support. The window closes in 3 hours. You're it." Nodded once, no hesitation. She turned to Miller. "You're with me." He swallowed, throat dry. "Both of us." Her eyes held his. "This is why you're here." The helicopter cut across black skies, stars buried behind thick cloud. Miller sat across from, watching as she opened her rifle case. The pink weapon gleamed under red cabin lights, its paint chipped from use, its barrel clean to perfection. She ran her hand along it, whispering words too soft for anyone but him to hear. "Sophie, guide me." Miller looked away, giving her privacy, but he felt the weight of it all the same. This wasn't just a mission. For her, it was always more. Leaned over, briefing in clipped sentences. Friendly unit stranded at Ridge Echo 7. 2 wounded, 3 holding. Enemy forces converging from both valleys. Estimated 30 combatants. You'll set overwatch, neutralize leadership, break the assault. Timing is critical. If they reach the ridge before extraction, we lose them. Miller asked the only question that mattered: distance. His eyes flicked to who answered for him. primary 6825, secondary 4800, tertiary moving at variable 52. Miller exhaled slowly, 7 kilometers again. His body tightened with disbelief. But then he remembered her voice during selection. Breathe. He nodded, understood. They deployed under cover of night, crawling into position on a ridge opposite the beleaguered team. Through his scope, Miller saw them, 5 silhouettes huddled around wounded comrades, muzzle flashes marking their desperate defense. Beyond them, shadows moved across. Dozens of enemies. Too many. The rain started again, quiet at first, then heavier, a storm building. Miller adjusted his scope, whispering the data to himself. Wind 3 to 5 knots, variable east, range 4800, moving target. Beside him, wrote numbers in her notebook, pages filling with formulas, corrections, predictions. Her focus was absolute, her breathing steady. The storm didn't shake her. The odds didn't shake her. Only when she touched her pendant did Miller see the crack. He whispered, "You ready?" She didn't look at him. "I don't have the luxury of not being." The radio crackled. "Overwatch, this is Sierra Actual. Extraction inbound 4 minutes. Suppress all threats." His voice cut calm. "Copy, executing." She shifted behind her pink rifle, every movement deliberate. Miller mirrored her, aligning on his targets. "On my mark," she whispered. Time stretched, thunder rolled, then execute. Miller fired. 2 targets dropped instantly, leaders of the advancing squads. His scope swung, found another, fired again. Clean hit. His rifle cracked in rapid succession. 6 shots in under 4 seconds. Through his scope, Miller saw enemies at the cave mouth collapse one by one, each round threading through storm and distance as though physics bent to her will. But then chaos. The enemy scattered, firing wildly. One squad broke formation, sprinting toward the stranded Americans. Miller adjusted, firing fast, too fast he missed. His curse caught in his throat. His voice sliced through him. "Breathe, Sergeant." He forced himself still, exhaled slow, squeezed. His next round dropped the squad leader. The assault wavered, then broke. Through the scope, he saw the extraction bird descend, rotors cutting the storm. The wounded were dragged aboard, the defenders covering with their last rounds. One by one, they boarded. The last man, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the practiced efficiency of a PJ, turned at the hatch. Even at this distance, Miller knew the gesture. A raised hand. A salute. His breath caught, her voice cracked for the first time all night. "Michael." Her brother. Miller looked at her, stunned. She never lowered her rifle, never wavered, but her hand brushed her pendant as tears mixed with the rain on her face. "Go," she whispered. The helicopter lifted, climbing fast, vanishing into. Lowered her rifle at last, her body sagging with relief. For the first time, Miller saw it, not the unshakable operative, not the legend whispered about in rumors, just a sister who had kept her promise. Back at base, the debrief was brief. Success. Hostiles neutralized, all friendlies recovered, no casualties. Dismissed them with a rare nod of approval. "Outstanding, both of you." Said nothing. She carried her rifle back to the armory, setting it gently on the bench. Her hand lingered on the engraved name, Sophie. Miller followed. He leaned against the wall, watching her shoulders tremble as she finally let herself breathe. "You did it," he said softly. Her voice was barely a whisper. "We did it because of her." Miller frowned. "Your sister." His eyes lifted, wet but fierce. "She couldn't make her shot, so I made mine. Everyone since. Everyone I ever will, not for medals, not for records, for her, for the ones who didn't come home, for the ones still waiting to." Miller's chest tightened. "And me, why am I here?" She studied him for a long time. Then softly, "Because I can't carry this alone." The next morning, the sun broke clear for the first time in days. Stood on the tarmac, pink rifle slung over her shoulder. Miller stood beside her, his own rifle case in hand. Around them, life went on. Moved equipment, mechanics fueled birds. Nobody looked twice at them. To the world, they were just two more soldiers. But they knew better. They were Sierra 7. Touched her pendant, her voice low, almost to herself. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Miller looked at her, and for the first time he understood. This wasn't about glory, or medals, or being the best shot in a competition. It was about promises kept in silence, sacrifices buried in secrecy, strength carried not for oneself but for others. And in that silence, on that tarmac under a brightening sky, a truth settled over him like armor. The world would never know her story, but he would. And that was enough.